Well, there's tons of NFL news and notes to go over. It is the Audible Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom, and we're starting with Carolina, of all things, Bloom. And we're going down our newswire at footballguys.com. DJ Moore started extension talks. All right, that's cool. He's like the lone bright spot. But with Carolina, it just got me thinking, well, what the hell are they going to do at quarterback? Which also leads me back to who did they hire from Liberty? They actually hired a coach who wasn't there with Malik Willis, by the way. They missed each other by a year. Was it Joe Daly, I think? Yeah, it was Joe Daly, who had now was Boston College's offensive coordinator, named the new wide receivers coach for the Carolina Panthers. So he comes into the pros, but he spent 7 years at Liberty, left the year before Malik Willis transferred from Auburn. So I'm just saying, Bloom, what do they got? Number 6 overall?
Yeah.
Hey, DJ Moore extension talks. Yeah, great. What are you going to do at QB?
Yeah, and I think, Cease, you do a good job leading us into the draft quarterback talk, which, as we've already touched on, there's not a top 5 quarterback. There's not a quote-unquote franchise quarterback in this draft, but there are quarterbacks that teams might talk themselves into, and then also get that fear that some other team might have talked themselves into that quarterback. So we may well see a quarterback go as high as number 6 to Carolina, and there's that urgency because is Matt Rule a lame duck? Is Ben McAdoo anything, really? Nobody wanted to go to Carolina. Nobody wants to be part of this regime, knowing that it's a make-or-break year. And that also can go back to DJ Moore. And you wonder if DJ Moore is, number one, thinking, is this the right organization for me to develop and hit my peak in my prime? And what is this team going to look like in a year or two? Who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to be the head coach? Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? So there's a lot more questions than answers in Carolina right now. And since I think we can say when David Tepper bought the team, this probably wasn't how he envisioned the first few years going.
No, and he wanted to dabble. He wanted to get involved with things. And that's why you saw Will Grier picked by that team and then forced into the starting lineup. That was from Tepper. So he started getting a little medal-y. Yeah. And then he got away from metal. Maybe metal a little bit, right? Matt Rule's a terrible coach. Yeah. Terrible. And then, we went over in the coaching carousel shows. It's like, hey, you really got to make a splash as your OC. Like, oh.
Ben McAdoo. You can't make a splash when you don't know if the head coach is going to be around in a year. And maybe it's Scott Fitterer, who is from the Seattle bloodlines, that is handing Matt Rule a list of offensive coaches he should look at. But either way, it's clear that Matt Rule is no longer the coach king. That crown, maybe a little sideways, not sitting well, but sitting heavy as the Panthers are. Here's the bright side. Here's the silver lining.
Okay.
Who's going to be Tampa's quarterback? Who's going to be New Orleans' quarterback? Is Atlanta possibly going to improve as they're going through their cap hell to burn off all of the sins of the past? This division is wide open and may not even have a winner with a winning record.
Well, this conference is wide open. It leads us right in. 3 minutes in, I talk about Aaron Rodgers. Bloom, I'm contractually obligated in Denver by Sports Radio 104.3 The Fan to talk about Aaron Rodgers every 3.5 minutes. So we've got your Rodgers update every 15 right here on The Fan.
Right.
Ask Cragged Ballsack. Why would Aaron Rodgers leave the NFC? Now, if he wants to leave, the deal is, could be very easy to come by with the Broncos. Let's just say that. I've revealed too much, Bloom. But, if he wants to leave.
Yeah.
Well, why would he want to leave? Brady's retired. Who the hell in the NFC would put up a fight? If they were able to keep things available in Green Bay, which, again, the franchise window is opening up on the 22nd of February. We're recording this on the 17th of February. Time of this recording, Bloom. Not only is that division there, that whole conference is there for somebody. Maybe it's Rodgers and the Packers to just roll through it. This reminds me of the East in basketball, right? In the day. No, maybe not now, but anyway, when the East was super weak and LeBron's like, I'm going to clean up on everybody. Well, don't go to the West. And things are a little different in the West, and things are a little different in the AFC.
Yeah, and see, this is what we've seen for a while, right? The NFC, it was either Brady or Peyton or Roethlisberger with a little cameo by Joe Flacco, and now Patrick Mahomes trying to assert himself maybe as someone that has that hold on the AFC. Super Bowl berths, and it was a revolving door of teams and quarterbacks on the NFC side. And you're right, it continues to be wide open. But how can we really read Aaron Rodgers? What was the quote from one of the Packers high ups? He's a different kind of guy. What does that mean? It means
Complicated fella.
Complicated fella. It means that I don't know if Aaron Rodgers knows what his motivations are at this point. Sometimes, Cease, we speculate on something thinking that there is actually an answer and maybe we don't know that answer. I don't know if there is an answer to this right now. And adding to this that he's now apparently breaking up with Shailene, which no, we're not TMZ. No, we're not celebrity gossip. However, it's clear that much like Giselle in Tom Brady's life, his girlfriend at the time had a strong influence on him, right? His whole appearance. She's from where?
Boulder.
Oh, wow. But so maybe that's something. I think maybe they lived in New Mexico. I don't know.
That was a large attraction, was to go to their place in Boulder. He buys his cowboy hats in Greeley. Mm-hmm. Like, he loves Denver, but now does he love Denver less because he's not together with Shailene?
And also that she had such an influence on him, right? This comes into the vaccine talk, which we're not going to get into that, but she obviously had an influence in his penchant for natural cures. His appearance changed whenever he got together with her. So without that influence, is he adrift right now? What does he come back to? And see, he says, what matters to him? Is it money? We hear this talk that Packers will make him the highest paid quarterback. I don't know.
I don't know how the hell they do that. They're $40 million over the cap.
And is it just respect, not the money, but the respect the money shows? Is it getting a ring? And should he feel like this is the best team to get him to that place? Maybe it would be Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians. Maybe it would be someplace else. Is it playing with the teammates, which brings in, well, what's going to happen with Devontae Adams? Are they a package deal? And then is it maybe just going into, as he showed this year, Cease, more than ever? Because Aaron Rodgers is not necessarily the most talkative guy, but all of a sudden now we're seeing him talking a lot more. The public persona, maybe the anti-Russell Wilson, if you will, because Russell Wilson wants to be the white hat and the host of award shows on Nickelodeon. Aaron Rodgers may be embracing more of the heel, or the everybody's against me and everybody hates me, which in and of itself is marketable and a marketable persona. Is he going to retire, and maybe is that his future? I don't know if he knows right now as he mulls all this over. And obviously, as you imply, Cease, a lot of teams, not just Green Bay, waiting for this answer.
Waiting for the domino to fall, which I think falls within a week. Okay? I could totally be wrong, but that deadline, the window opens. It's not a deadline. It's a window that opens for franchise tag on the 22nd. The Packers need to have the money for Devontae Adams as soon as they place the tag. Well, their decision on Devontae Adams is going to seriously impact what Aaron Rodgers does. And it doesn't mean there couldn't be a sign and trade and all this blah, 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 whatever. But I'll tell you this, and apologies to our man, William C., because we love you guys. Love you, Bengals fans. Happy for you, Rams fans, to be sure. But I think Matthew Stafford getting a Super Bowl ring, I'm not going to get into the Stafford Hall of Fame talk, which I think is boring. But Stafford getting a ring, he's got as many as Aaron Rodgers does.
Yeah.
Which is atrocious that Green Bay would even allow that to happen when you have that guy. I mean, it's almost like Michael Wilbon calls Kansas City the dynasty of one. Well, their dynasty might get rid of Eric Bieniemy. We'll talk about that in a little bit, Bloom. Yeah. But I look at this situation. I go, you know what? Stafford getting a ring probably motivates Rodgers. And then what did Peyton Manning say to him when he handed him his MVP trophy? Because Peyton Manning, like Aaron Rodgers, had 4 MVPs when he came to Denver. Peyton Manning, like Aaron Rodgers, only had 1 Super Bowl. Then he came to Denver. Obviously, great asset for the Broncos. And I'm not going to give away too much, Bloom. If Rodgers wants it, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not filling anything. I'm not revealing too much. I'm just going to tell everyone, mark my words, if Rodgers wants it, it's there. This isn't Green Bay. We'll trade him to the highest bidder. No, they won't, because he'll just retire. We're going to trade you to Cleveland. Like, no, he's going to just retire. That's Rodgers. They made an agreement last year. There was a trade last year. The trade was, I'll play for you 1 more year, and then you send me to where I want to go.
Right.
Does he want to go there? Nobody knows this. That's why any sort of Rodgers rumblings, whether it's about his girlfriend or fiance or what have you, or whether it's about the Packers said they go all in. The Packers are doing PR, man.
Yeah.
All right. And I know
like they were last year.
And Adam is my mentor. He's a dear friend. This has nothing to do with his information. His information is tight. It's top of the line, right? We all know that about Adam Schefter. But I'll say this, the Green Bay Packers were doing spin, because if they go all in and it works, they can say, good thing we went all in. And if they go all in and it doesn't work, they can go to the fans and say, well, we tried, we went all in. It's all up to Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah, the old Mel Gibson movie, what was it called? It's What Women Want. It's another offseason of what Aaron Rodgers wants. I just don't know if Aaron Rodgers knows what Aaron Rodgers wants.
Would we want to hear what's going on in Aaron Rodgers' head?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we are. Maybe we have been all along.
Right. I so want to be Henri Bloom. I really do. If we didn't have our YouTube overlords, I'd be like super Henri with this topic. But anyway.
There'll be times.
There'll be times. Times are changing. YouTube overlords. Take that. All right. What about if the Packers went all in for Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper may be released by the Dallas Cowboys. Again, going over our newswire at footballguys.com, traded or released this offseason because he's scheduled to make $20 million, and the Cowboys are $21.4 million over the cap. Now we have a double thing here, and I'll bring up Dak Prescott briefly just because it's part of the conversation. Could they rework Dak Prescott's deal to make some salary cap room? Well, he's got a cap hit of 34.4 in 2022, and there's $77.8 million remaining in dead money. Hey, how about that new deal? Could we restructure it now? Like what, a year later, whatever it is. So, okay, the Amari Cooper conversation becomes interesting because if you're Green Bay and you're going to go all in, keep Devontae, go get Amari. I know it's crazy and it would never happen, by the way. But would Amari Cooper become available? And, how many teams would line up for him?
I don't know, Cease. And it just depends on what Amari Cooper's looking for. And you're right to focus on this. Over the Cap, by the way, overthecap.com is a good site if you don't know it to really familiarize yourself with, because when you think about these players, you need to go look at their contract structures. You need to go look at what dead cap money is attached to them. You need to go look at what they've been promised in terms of guaranteed money in upcoming years, if they're already been restructured, and it becomes even more interesting, Cease. We could spend a whole show breaking down the decisions the new regime in Minnesota is going to have to make, right? Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Donnell Hunter. Maybe even you can make an argument, especially for an analytics-based front office, about Dalvin Cook. He's good to have a running back on his second contract. And all of these things, in addition to what are the expectations of ownership, what are the expectations for the upcoming year, are in the calculus these decisions. Now, Cooper is due $20 million, and they could release him with only a $6 million cap hit. And as you said, Cease, in part because Jerry Jones hemmed and hawed about paying Dak Prescott what he was worth. Well, when they finally decided to do it, he was worth a lot more than when they originally could have done it. So in some ways, this is the makings of Jerry Jones and company by not committing to Dak Prescott after he played so well under an unbelievably cheap rookie contract. The complicating factor here, Cease, though, Dalton Schultz, free agent. Michael Gallup, free agent, coming off a torn ACL. Oh, man.
Right.
Cedric Wilson, who played very well at the end of the year, free agent. It can't all be on CD Lamb. You also have the Ezekiel Elliott contract, maybe Tony Pollard, who is getting closer to free agency himself. So you get all this stuff lined up, and Dan Quinn gets the defense together. It looks like they're in a Super Bowl window, and they just play terribly against the 49ers. Mike McCarthy. Who else is over here waiting to enter stage left, Cease? Sean Payton. So all this stuff where everything is lining up and everything is getting solidified, now the cracks are showing. And something else just to toss in as a footnote, because a lot of things were going on. Mike Florio, and I want to say this has been confirmed, but I'm not sure. There was a report, I believe, from Mike Florio that in 2018, Sean Payton and the Cowboys were ready to try to engineer something where Payton would basically have his rights traded to the Saints, from the Saints to the Cowboys for some compensation, and he would take over. They did have a head coach at that time, the Cowboys, but they were waiting, Jason Garrett, they were waiting to see what was going to happen. And then Anthony Davis, bringing in basketball now, Cease, the Flailings. Anthony Davis at that point asserted with the Pelicans that he wanted out. and Gail Benson and the Benson ownership group of both teams, and Mickey Loomis actually also, the GM of the Saints, has a high up office with the Pelicans. They said we can't have Sean Payton and Anthony Davis leave in the same offseason, and that put the kibosh on that. Now, that's the report. Of course, you can believe it because the Cowboys and Sean Payton have had this mutual relationship where every time Sean Payton needs to get paid, the Cowboys are like, maybe we'll court him, and then Sean Payton gets paid. And he got paid after that, by the way. So Mike McCarthy's looking over his shoulder. Amari Cooper's looking over his shoulder. Dak Prescott wondering just what did I get into? But if it's with Sean Payton a year down the line, maybe something a lot better than what we saw at the end of the year.
Maybe. We'll see how that goes for the Dallas Cowboys as they look to try to figure things out with their salary cap situation. I think I flipping hate this new NFL schedule, man, because like the Super Bowl's a week later and the season's a week later, and you don't get to spend Christmas with anybody because, well, the season's going on. Bloom, I'm bitching. Sorry, Joe. But like the combine's like right here. Like, right here. Right here. No player access. I was asked by my boss at the radio station, Raj Sharon.
Hey, Raj.
What's up, Raj Kumar? If I was going to go to the combine or if I wanted to go to the combine. And I was like, why? You don't have player access. And not only that, Bloom, the word is, and Tony Pauline, our good friend, real classy. That's an inside joke between me and Tony. But anyway, he had reported that players aren't going to run. You're going to see fewer players run the 40 because you're not going to allow. And we've been there with Travell, right? Travell had to set up, and you go to these places and all the top trainers will have like conference rooms basically that they've cleared out and they've put in, little weight sets and plyometric, all these sorts of things. Like you could do a little 10-yard dash or whatever, like, so you can get proper stretching and your trainer's right there. And then you can go run the 40. None of that's allowed now. The players are going to be in a bubble, basically the hotel, and not even the hotel restaurant, like the place where you would get in the combines where people talk the most because everyone's getting blasted because it's Indy and what else is there to do in Indianapolis? But stumble.
Sorry, Indianapolis folks.
Yes, love Indianapolis. It's awesome. What I remember of it. But anyway, so that's where you get the information. Well, none of that's going to happen this year. None of it. Like you can go to St. Elmo's, fine. Players can't go there. Coaches, like it's a lockdown. It's like a little NFL bubble like they had with the NBA a couple years ago. So no player access, fewer players running the 40, which means what in the pre-draft process, Bloom?
Well, does the 40 even matter anymore? Right?
I think we're getting to that point, especially with analytics being
exactly and the chip data.
Yes,
that's the thing. The GPS data, right?
Yes.
Does the 40 even matter anymore? And you mentioned our good friend Travell, who's the best. If you hear that a player is working out with Travell Gaines, just know that they're working out with the best and what that means. The training for the 40 is training for the 40. Getting your 40 time down, eating Skittles, right, Cease? Getting your 40 time down is just becoming good at getting your 40 time down. It's not a football skill.
No.
And you've always heard people say that, but now teams have access to the data. They have access to the acceleration. They have access to the top speed. They have access to curvilinear speed. And we talked about the stuff with Patrick Mahomes going backwards and going sideways and what percentage of his speed he loses. So does the 40 even matter? See, if there's anybody that's going to mourn this, agents. It's agents can't use it to puff up a player, Dexter Jackson. They can't use it to puff up a player who otherwise doesn't really have it. So I think that 40 time shouldn't matter. And if players don't run the 40 anymore, we didn't really lose anything. And I think the NFL has caught up to that. And I just hope, Cease, that then in turn we get access to more of that data. We get access to more of the data the teams have. And again, all of these measurables are confirmations. They are not attributes of the player in and of themselves. They're affirmations, confirmations of what you observe on film.
Right. What you observe on film is much more important. I think pro days will get a little more bumped up because pro days have always been the double check, right? Mm-hmm. Not the discount double check, Aaron. Again, seriously, every 3.5 minutes, every 15 minutes on the van.
You mean I'm not getting the Cecil Lammey discount?
Exactly. I'm just a regular sneakerhead. So now the pro days, I think, might become a little bit more, or guys will just stop running the 40 altogether.
Yeah.
If there's a top guy, imagine, your top, if there was a Trevor Lawrence this year, or hell, Hutchinson, right? Or Thibodeau,
Right.
whatever you want to say for this year's draft. If they just say, nope, not doing any of that. You guys got all the data. And by the way, you said you hope we get that data. We won't get it unless they want us to. There's coaches and scouts that still hate that we have access to all 22.
Right.
Now I have access to a team's coaching film, so I can see all that. But like the general public, NFL.com, there's coaches and scouts that are pissed that you can watch all 22 now because everybody's an expert.
Yeah. Well, again, when you look at the way the game is played, it's a game. It's a game of draft perceptions. It's a game of subterfuge. It's a game where teams spend way too much time worrying about what other teams are doing. So I do want to go back to your point on pro days real quickly, and the combine for that matter, and measurables. There is still a group of players who do need the combine and do need pro days and do need the measurables. Really two groups. First is the small school players, because what you observe on film with those players isn't quite as meaningful because of the players around them, and you don't necessarily know, and the measurables are a way to, in an objective way, compare their physical traits to some of the players that, well, when you see a player playing against SEC competition, you have a pretty good idea if they're going to hang in the NFL athletically. And then players coming back from injuries. I think players coming back from injuries, if they or players that otherwise dropped off in their senior year going into the draft and want to show that it was because of injury. So we can always make exceptions where this data is meaningful, but overall it is becoming less meaningful to teams, which means it should probably be less meaningful to us.
Joe Burrow got an MCL sprain in the Super Bowl. Shocking. How should Cincinnati should spend every pick on offensive linemen. Like, it sounds ludicrous, right? Somewhere Mike Dick is like, it's a great idea. Yeah. But like, I don't want to see Joe Burrow, and William, I don't want to scare you, brother. And I appreciate you jumping in the chat room as always. But like, I don't want Joe Burrow to be Andrew Luck. You know what I mean? The Colts ruined Andrew Luck. They ruined him. And you took something that was like surefire, top of the top. Everybody loves him. This is great. So much fun. What great skill. The complete quarterback. Everything that you want. Leadership. All the intangibles. Off the charts skill. And you ruined him because you got him killed. I think players are going to retire sooner than they used to, right? So this whole Aaron Donald stuff, it's like, yeah, you're 30. You still got your health. You got millions in the bank. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
This game, you sacrifice so much. And I don't even want to get into the professional athletes that have been, committing suicide or worse, or killing other people or whatever because of their CTE and all the stuff that we've learned from the players from back in the day, the players that deal with this torment because they played the game. So if you're Aaron Donald, retire. If you're Joe Burrow, get some damn protection, man.
Yeah, and I think we also have to look to Brian Callahan, and we have to look to the offensive game planning. We have to look to how you self-scout. And I think against the Titans, the team was able to win despite this flaw. Against the Chiefs, they were able to win and showed signs that they were self-scouting and understanding how to make their flaws on the right side of the offensive line matter less. And then against the Rams, we saw, again, no adjustments. We saw no reckoning with the fact that you were getting beat and you were facing Von Miller and you were facing Aaron Donald and you were facing Leonard Floyd, and you needed to adjust. So that's the micro level, the macro level. The whole franchise needs to adjust. But like you said, Cease, everybody sees this. And the good news is picking at the 31st spot is a spot you can still get a very good guard prospect. You can still get a very good prospect to just help the depth of your line. Look at what the Packers did with Elton Jenkins a few years back, where he ended up being able to play left tackle, center, guard, whatever you ask him to. They need some more players like that. We can look back at some picks that did not work out, picks like Jake Fisher, picks like Billy Price. These are picks that Cedric Ogbuehi. So they have been investing. They have been investing first-round picks, second-round picks in these offensive linemen. The good news is Jonas Williams, first-round pick from 2019, missed his whole rookie season, played, I believe, about double the number of snaps in 2021 as he'd played in his career to that point. So that's good. You've got that in place. Quentin Spain ended up being a really good pickup from the Bills. So they are getting some things in place now. We'll see about Jackson Carman, the second round pick last year. Big, great story that he was coming back to Cincinnati. Didn't exactly do much. So it isn't for a lack of trying, but they have to keep trying. And see, we can look to the Cowboys and Dan Quinn and what they did and said, the defense is the problem. We need to invest on defense. They used all their picks on defense. Some of those guys really started making plays right away for this team. I think the Bengals will have that same straightforward approach. And it's refreshing to be talking about the Bengals. How can they return to the Super Bowl? How can they stay at this level? Instead of how can they get back to a respectable level? But like you said, let's not ruin Joe Burrow in the process, because unfortunately, due to his personality, he's all too willing to be ruined because he puts his team before himself.
When he yelped in pain, you're like, oh God.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's so tough. So who was it? Was it Fred Taylor that his hamstring popped off?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? He just threw the ball.
Right.
He was running full tilt, and then all of a sudden he goes down and just throws the ball. And you're like, oh my God, that had to hurt. So yeah, get Burrow right and make sure he doesn't turn into Dan Marino. Anyway, is Kyler Murray going to be available?
Ooh.
The Kyler Murray situation is one to monitor. He took all his stuff off Instagram. Okay, yeah. All right. This is how I know I'm getting old, Bloom, because all these stories about Aaron Rodgers broke up his girlfriend or Kyler Murray Instagram, I just get pissed off. I'm like, oh God, social networking doesn't matter. It's good for business. It's good to have a little fun, catch up with the sports. But as far as anything else, it doesn't matter. But my grumpiness and oldness aside, let's talk about Murray and not going back on the field in their loss, feeling like he's getting blamed for everything, having Colt McCoy reportedly or allegedly or whatever tell him, you need to get out there, man. And Murray didn't. Having players respond to that. The players that I've talked to that obviously played years ago, Bloom, they hate that stuff. You won't go out there and lose with us. You won't go out there for the last minute of the game and take that snap or whatever. You won't go out there. I don't want you on my team. So the Kyler Murray stuff is interesting because where could he go when he's in the perfect system, supposedly, for him with Cliff Kingsbury? So does this thing get patched up? Usually these things kind of do, but this one's a little different, Bloom.
This one is different. And see, we can go all the way back to how quickly these things get swept under the rug. That going into the draft in 2019, maybe not at this time. By this time, I think it was certain he was going to go into the draft, and people were just starting to accept it. When Eric Galco came on our show and said he's going to be the number one pick, at that time, people thought that was absurd. They had just drafted Josh Rosen the year before. And what was exciting about that was that Cliff Kingsbury had been looking at Kyler Murray from afar and saying, that's the guy that run my system. He never had a chance to do it in college. Yeah, I think he had a pretty good quarterback at Texas Tech. I don't remember who it was. And he got Kyler Murray, and it didn't exactly turn out. See, there's a lesson about infatuation, right? There's a lesson about love from afar here, that when it's up close and you have to make it work, maybe it's not so easy to make it work. And the specter of baseball comes up, right? The specter of baseball comes up.
Sure.
Because why not? His career will last longer. There's guaranteed money.
His avatar was of him in the A's, right? That's what he switched it to.
Well, that was why nobody expected. Look, going into his last season in college, nobody thought he was going to play in the NFL. It was just a settled thing that he was not going to play in the NFL. He was going to be a Major League Baseball player. So that looms. There's also an aspect of this cease. It kind of reminds me of Dwayne Haskins to an extent. Doesn't Calvin Murray kind of run the show for Kyler? It's kind of like Eli, too, where is Kyler even the one making these decisions? Is Kyler going to be the final arbiter of his future? I don't know. I don't know what's on his mind, but there's two levels of significance here. One is if he wouldn't go back out on the field when his teammates and his team saying you have to go back out on the field. That's significant. But what's probably more significant is that we know about it. because there's a lot of stuff like that happens that we never hear about. But when it gets
We're not
out,
supposed to hear about it.
we're not supposed to hear about it. And this is like you said about the Packers trying to do PR. Now, how does this fit into some sort of working theory? I don't know, but I know this. There's enough smoke to feel like this is an uncertain situation. And we're coming up on when the Cardinals, they're going to have a 5th-year option to decide about Kyler, right? They're going to have an extension, and we're talking about extension. And owners, see, so you mentioned this, and people don't understand the cash part of running a team. If you have to, the franchise tag, like you have to have that cash, right? Like you have to be, so likewise with guaranteed money, signing bonuses and things like that. What's Kyler Murray? We're already hearing. I don't know if you're going to have this in the news and notes. He's what? Derek Carr extension will be like $40 million.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels actually likes the quarterback.
Yeah, $40 million a year. And some people might say, Derek Carr, $40 million a year. Are you crazy? No, you're not crazy.
$45 million. Kirk
Right.
Cousins is awful.
Yeah, it's not crazy. So what's Kyler Murray's number going to be when he's not necessarily fully committed to the team? Is the team going to fully commit to him? So I think this is just something people need to have on their radar, that yes, there's something to this. There is a fracture. Like you said, Cease, by the time the season rolls around, it can be healed, but it can also be a sign of something coming down the line. And this is something we're going to watch closely. And old man ran aside. I'm old too, Cease. Unfortunately, social media is one of the few windows we have into these things, like when the Odell Beckham Brown situation was breaking down, etc. So we'll see. Maybe that will be one of our best clues, or something that in hindsight will tell us information, but we didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, realize, have your antennas up. And we round out today's news and notes and combine rumors show with a talk about Eric Bieniemy and the new report. I'm sure you've seen it. And for the love of God, this is... Chiefs fans already don't like me, Bloom. They're really not going to like me after this.
Cease, which fan bases do like you?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
Right into the show, folks. Let us know if you're part of a fan base.
Down in the
they like
comment
Cecil
section. Right. You like me. The Chiefs Kingdom, editorial staff and chief officer, whatever the hell this... Whoever had this story, which is very fascinating. I think there are some truths in it from what I've heard. There are some untruths in it from what I've heard. But get a different name. That's just the stupidest and longest name of all time. Chiefs Kingdom, editorial staff and process, you Kingdom, Chiefs Kingdom. Kingdom of what? You guys got one ring and then 2 rings if you count in the Len Dawson one, of course. But anyway. My rant aside, Chiefs, we love you. Love your barbecue.
Yeah.
And Cabaret USA. Anyway, the Eric Bieniemy thing with the fact that him and Pat Mahomes didn't get along. And the fact that there would be like arguing matches in the headset. Mahomes would be like, just give me the blank and play. And Mike Kafka's, gets a little bit larger role. And Andy Reid's not changing plays, although he can. And Eric Bieniemy, who we've said it on the show, Eric Bieniemy was calling plays. Because people are like, he doesn't even call plays. Like, yes, he was calling plays. Now, Andy Reid probably should have double-checked some stuff. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't want to. This is a large topic. Yes, it will get into social issues, obviously. You have what the report said the NFL was begging the Saints to hire Eric Bieniemy instead of Dennis Allen because of the Brian Flores stuff and because the NFL's like, we don't have a problem with racism. Wait, we do. I mean, hey, we're about diversity, everybody. Yay. Like, yes, the NFL's pushing that. What do they really care about? Money. We know that. Ask anybody. What's the NFL care about? Their money. Here's how I go into my corporations rant, Bloom. But anyway, the Bieniemy thing is huge. There's part of it that's true. There's part of it that aren't true. And the report also said that they kept Bieniemy around for one more year because they thought the optics of getting rid of him as an African-American coach would look worse than keeping him and just kind of dealing with it. And things got worse. You just mentioned hey, maybe it's a sign of things to come. I will say this because some people can't believe that. Why would you keep a coach because the optics of firing him because he's a minority coach would be bad? I know a team. Maybe you know this team as well, Bloom.
Maybe.
I know a team that didn't want to fire their head coach because he was African-American because of the optics. They wanted to fire him. They gave him no power. They wanted to fire him. they didn't. They had another coach, veteran coach, lined up. They didn't make this move because they were afraid of the optics of that. So they kept him on board as their head coach. He had zero power, and he was fired the next year.
Yeah.
And we can talk about second chances for African-American coaches because it just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Okay, sure, Lovey, whatever. But like getting a first chance as a minority coach is difficult enough. Getting a second chance is damn near impossible. And if you're Eric Bieniemy, you're just not going to get a head coaching job. And now with this report, clearly a smear campaign, whatever you want to call it, for Bieniemy. Again, there's some of this stuff that's true. Is Bieniemy a little bit of a prick? Can I say that? I'm sorry, Joe, if I can't. Like, he is. And I say that lovingly. I can't say I'm friends with Eric Bieniemy, but I know him. He knows me. I'm friendly with him. A lot of my best friends are like close friends with Eric Bieniemy. Like my guys like Mike Pritchard, right? My guys like Chad Brown. Obviously played with him at CU and won a national title. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about this, but I'm just going to tell you, EB, can he get a little grumpy? Sure. Can he get in your kitchen? Yes. Is he old school, yell at you? Yes. Did that clash with Mahomes? Yes. But this piece, the timing of it, the other information about the Chiefs being nervous to get rid of him, just let his contract expire and hope it goes away. Very complicated report here.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, it's just setting up a pretext, right? Bieniemy's not going to be back. Why? Well, let's go ahead and manufacture consent. Let's go ahead and show everybody why before it happens, so we're not criticized. Because, as you said, Cease, there's the other level of optics of the lawsuit in the NFL. It's not a meritocracy. What am I talking about? Apply it to whatever you want. It's not a meritocracy. It's not necessarily about performance. It's not about bottom line money. It is about that. Wins and losses, or are your players overachieving? Are your units overachieving? It can be about personalities. It can be about relationships. And as we indicated, Cease, like the Kyler Murray item, is it meaningful that Eric Bieniemy had problems with Patrick Mahomes? Is it meaningful that maybe his personality didn't? See, this is a replay over everything we were hearing about a month ago about Brian Flores, right?
Mm-hmm.
If all of the records, if everything was just thrown open, oh my, what we would learn about every head coach, every coordinator,
right?
Everyone. Have you read the thing about the Cowboys cheerleaders locker roroom?
Yeah, and then they don't talk about the Washington. And by the way, Ben brings up this too. I'll say this too. Vic Fangio, prick. Matt Nagy, prick. Like, again, sorry, Joe, or YouTube. I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can't say. I'm from the country. I cuss like I use like I'm. It was, but yeah. You guess who are jerks? If I can clean it up, Bloom. Guess who are jerks?
NFL head coaches. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a high pressure job. So that we're hearing about it, it's a pretext for something. All these questions: how did Eric Bieniemy never get a job? How did Eric Bieniemy never get a job? They're trying to answer that with this, but there's the lawsuit. Now we get to the elephant in the room: the lawsuit, and this isn't going to go away. And yes, it's very easy to believe. And I know some people said John McClain at this point has no credibility in Houston, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when John McClain immediately writes an article saying the Texans hired Lovie Smith because of the lawsuit, we all thought it. And I'm not saying that John McClain has specific firsthand information, but if John McClain, who's been covering the Texans or covering Houston sports maybe for longer than we've been alive, if he is willing to put that front and center and in a place that buys ink by the barrel full, which is still kind of important, then it's not taboo to talk about it. It's not taboo to talk about the NFL is worried. This is a threat. This lawsuit is a credible threat to the league's bottom line, or their perceptions, which leads back to the bottom line. And there's so many layers we could peel back here, Cease. But I will say this. It's something I come back to when people talk about the Rooney Rule, which is obviously, the Rooney Rule is not bad per se. At the very least, the Steelers hired Mike Tomlin because of the Rooney Rule. That's kind of an interesting twist, right? That it's the Rooney Rule, and the Steelers were the one team that, in the spirit of the rule, actually had an open. They were going to hire Wizengrim. It was going to be Russ Grimm and Ken Wisenhunt. They bring in this young guy, Mike Tomlin, this up and coming star in defensive coaching, and they're just like, this is the guy. I think this is the guy. I think this, and he's still the guy. And we're here in 2022 because of the Rooney Rule. The NFL did not institute the Rooney Rule because they're woke. They didn't institute the Rooney Rule out of the goodness of their heart. They didn't institute the Rooney Rule because they are pioneers and trendsetters in equality and accessibility to high positions to people of color. They instituted the Rooney Rule because that was their only choice instead of doing something that would be more, let's say, indicting them. I know it's a legal term. In what has been going on and what continues to go on. And you can look back to the reactions to the Flores lawsuit that former players said that this is just making public something that everybody in the league knows.
Yes, and that's why I was at the Senior Bowl when this thing dropped, and there were people reporting, and I don't know who, Bloom, so nobody at me. Like, I don't pay attention to that crap. Like, I look at my at replies. Here I'm complaining again, Bloom. I'm getting old and cranky. But because you just say something, he was talking about you. No, I don't know people. I know I heard something like someone said that there's skepticism about Flores. And so I went on the air in Denver and I said, you know who says there's skepticism? The guys who haven't been through it. Talk to minority scout. Talk to minority coach, as I did in Mobile. And guess what they tell you? Exactly the same thing you just said. We all knew it was happening. Flores is the first one to really go public with it.
And this is something that is going to have far-reaching effects because the NFL is shook. This reminds me of the Ray Rice video, Cease. When all of a sudden
Ray Rice's video, his suspension was, sorry, Bloom, 2 games long. The longest suspension for domestic violence. Remember, the NFL really cares. We really care. Buy our women's line of products. We really care about domestic violence. 2 games was the longest suspension ever. Then the video came out. Ray Rice never played football again.
Right. And the NFL was saying, what do we have to do to make this better? Is this good enough? Is this good enough?
Right.
The NFL, like a certain political party that I won't mention, the NFL is really good at saying, we are having this idea. What do you think? Oh, you don't like it? Oh, well, then we won't do it.
Both of them, by the way, Bloom.
Yeah, both of them.
Both of them.
And the NFL is only reacting where they feel like their interests are at stake. And much like in the Ray Rice situation, they sensed that it rippled through the mass consciousness. And people were actually, instead of talking about football, they were talking about Ray Rice. Instead of talking about the clips from the previous week's games, they were talking about the clip of Ray Rice.
Right.
And this Brian Flores lawsuit, now the washing machine, it gets faster and faster, and our attention span gets shorter and shorter. However, I believe you don't file a lawsuit on February 1st, the first day of Black History Month, and in your first line item in the filing, mention Black History Month unless you have a plan. See, there are receipts. There's more to come out. Mm-hmm. And what's going to be interesting as we take this from Eric Bieniemy into the lawsuit, and they're intertwined. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. Is that from a legal standpoint, where does this lead? Does this lead to Stephen Ross no longer having a team as a sacrificial lamb? Because what is worse is if this lawsuit goes into the further stages and then you have discovery and you have the reach of subpoenas to bring out materials that the league does not want brought to light.
There's a lot of minority former players and people that I talk to that hope he doesn't settle. They want to see this fully out in the open because if there's a legal process, and you're the lawyer, Bloom, not me. I went to 1 year of community college, so people are like, we can tell, Cecil, we can tell. There's so much more.
There's so much more. Tip of the iceberg, baby.
Yep.
And is the NFL the Titanic? I have a dream, Cecil. Shouldn't put specifically. That's not a quote of Martin Luther King Jr. in Black History Month, but I still wonder if maybe one day there can be some sort of player-owned league where, especially now when there's more stadiums, and do people root for laundry anymore? I don't know. I mean, Washington's the Commanders now. Is that going to change people's devotion to the team? I don't think so. Where I think, much like we're seeing in the college ranks, players are responsible for a lot more of the value created by the sport than the share that they get, even in the NFL. And players know this. Unfortunately, the CBA sees this. We could go anywhere with these topics, right? Because it's easy to
They don't
forget
have any
that.
power.
Well, they don't have any power because the CBA was passed, if you remember, at the very beginning of COOF on March 15th of 2020. So it was passed under duress. In some ways, it was unbelievably convenient for the owners that the players, in a very narrow vote, passed the new CBA. And if you remember, a lot of players were in dismay about it. A lot of players were posting on social media, sorry, Cease, but they were posting on social media like, we gave it away. You know, we gave everything to the owners. I can't believe that some of y'all voted for this. You remember this? And it just got swept under the rug. A lot of this happened in the last 2 years. But a lot of players understood that the CBA, which covers the next 10 years, was not really in the best interest of all players. It might have been in the best interest of some of the players, a small number of players, a select group of players. So I bring all this up because this is complicated. Baseball, they have their own labor situation going on right now. This is complicated, but I think that what we see is a legitimate threat to the league's interests, and you can tell by how they have closed ranks and how they have all of a sudden made every effort they can to change those optics, which in some ways reinforces that there was a big problem to begin with.
And there's some people shaking their fist at anything. I guess I just shake it at social networking. But anyway, Bloom, it's a culture change that is going to be very rough adjustment for the NFL. The NFL has always been pretty backwards in a lot of stuff. Bring up the cheerleading thing again.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. Jerry, here's the money. Go away.
We will never speak of this again.
Yes. And Dan Snyder. I don't know how the hell Dan Snyder has a team.
Probably because of mutually assured destruction, Cease. Probably because of mutually assured destruction. And this is where the Stephen Ross thing becomes interesting. Because if Stephen Ross doesn't want to give up his franchise, remember, this is a cartel of billionaires. The cartel is made up of people who aren't used to being told what to do.
Yes.
So I think that you need to have more. Now, if Stephen Ross was basically asking his coach to fix games, that's enough.
Yes.
That's enough. And you can already tell, I'm going to quote my good friend Eric Stoner, who I had a nice long text conversation with, when he said that I was just joking defense. Sure sounds like what you say when you know there are receipts, when you know there's proof that you said it. Yeah. Oh, I was just joking. So that's a pretext to remove Stephen Ross from his team. Now, does Stephen Ross go down kicking and screaming? Or with respect to Dan Snyder, does Dan Snyder say, if you make me give up my team, I'm going to bring whatever to light that you don't want to know about? Is that why Jerry Jones has no comment when they ask him about Dan Snyder? Because who are the two owners? We know this going back to the CBA back in 2011? 2011. Right? Yeah. That Jerry Jones and Dan Snyder are the two loose cannons of the owners that want to look after their own interests more than the league's interests. And the league is actually, at the cartel level, socialist. I mean, in the sense that they spread everything out equally by the letter of the law in their agreement they do. But Jerry Jones feels like, I can make so much more money off of the Cowboys if you just let me. Dan Snyder, who knows what his motivations are, but he just is going to do whatever he wants to do.
Know.
Yeah, we don't want to know. Talk about Mel Gibson and what Dan Snyder wants. No, we don't want to know that. We don't want to think about that. So this is all very delicate. And Brian Flores in this lawsuit has brought something to light that was not a secret or not something that was the subject of speculation among players and people in the league. It was well known. And now the league has to do something, not just to deal with this lawsuit. They might be able to take care of the lawsuit, but they still have to take care of that impulse, that consciousness among people of color in the league saying, when are you going to do something about this?
Right. And now with 9 general managers that are minorities, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we're almost to 10. Almost to double digits. So in the NFL, again, very, very backwards. Everything from the player level.
Right.
Players have had lots of conversations in locker rooms that people wouldn't want to know.
No.
Or if people did know, they'd be very disappointed in their heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worse at the coaching level, and it's really bad at the ownership level, because that's the most exclusive club in the world outside of the Illuminati. Bloom, YouTube just took our video down.
That's all right.
I'm kidding.
I'll see you at the Bohemian Grove, Cease.
Everybody's fine. We're good, right? What is it? Burning Man? What is it? What's the Utah desert?
Burning Man.
Yeah. We were gonna go out there, get our Mad Max on, right? Ride around on a bicycle with the thong on. I could see you doing that, right?
Yeah.
Let's go live in a tent for a week, dude, right? And then burn it all down.
Yes, exactly. That's I will not disagree. I'll co-sign on
you, me, bicycles and thongs.
Exactly.
Let's make it happen.
I'm thinking about for Mardi Gras Day, Cease wearing a thong and just painting my whole body gold.
I love gold.
Yeah.
Anyway, large conversations fit into this for sure. We appreciate you guys for listening. Appreciate for riding along all this off season. We're gonna have news and notes for you. I know On the Couch will make a triumphant return here, Bloom. We have our Dynasty show every week, programmed to give you Dynasty success. So make sure to tune in for that. Launchpad, Dave Kluge, he's firing that up here on our YouTube channel. And we're still not at 15,000. So I ask very politely, and I urge you, get us to 15,000. Get us to 15,000 subscribers, please. I don't know. Maybe we should have an off-air conversation. Like maybe we should do some sort of giveaway or something at 15,000 or 20,000. Hell, push the number. Push it. Should be higher than that. Let's go. So like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. All these things help us grow the channel. By growing the channel, Sig and I are able to do more stuff, like more shows, and just hang out with you guys, which is what we really, really want to do. And, well, tell our truth, Bloom, and tell the truth that maybe some people don't. I just want sports as a distraction. I get that. I totally get that. But know that your sports need some fixing.
Yeah.
Not Vegas fixing. That's a different conversation. I'm going to brought that up.
Freudian slip, Cease.
I did a 3-hour show last night with Nick Ferguson where we hit it, man. We're just like, hey, is the NFL fixed? Is there a bad ref out there? Look at the Super Bowl, right? Logan Wilson holding what? You know, T. Higgins can drag Jalen Ramsey down by his face. Like there's no call. Like what? There's a missed extra point. You know what I mean? Like just little things. Hey, celebration penalty. Little things that make you go, Anyway, Bloom, I'll leave that one alone. He's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. We are the Audible. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.